Viewers of iRadio, thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Joseph Akile, and I'm the host of the Dawn program, one of the flagship program on iRadio. Today, we are pleased to have Honorable Dr. James Alic Garang, who is the governor of the Bank of South Sudan. Governor, thank you very much for accepting our request and for allowing us to have this one-on-one conversation with you today for the very first time since your appointment. We appreciate that, and it's our pleasure. Governor, first thing first, would like you to outline to us some of your achievements since your appointment in office as the governor of the Bank of South Sudan, but not necessarily as you in person, but under your leadership since last year.
And let me also thank you to iRadio for hosting me this morning, and especially for what you have been doing to the people and our country, informing and educating the public on what is out there. What I can say is really true that it's not me as an individual, but it's the Bank of South Sudan, and what we have been doing since I came on board since October last year, 2023. Without sounding glorious or repetitive, I can just say we have achieved together. The Bank of South Sudan has achieved a number of things under my leadership. We accomplished issues to do with staff welfare, strengthen capacity building, improve communication, expansion of the branch network, and improved infrastructure, and of course enhanced financial inclusion, and at the same time have now advanced to a stage where we can host the national payment system. If I can just break down some of these achievements that I've just highlighted with some examples, I would say that we have worked really well on improving the policy and environment of the Bank of South Sudan by leveraging on the existing framework, in particular the 5-year strategic plan of the bank, which is intended to modernize the Bank of South Sudan. Both under my leadership has strengthened and deepened its regional engagement with other central banks. And with this, from April 29 to May 3rd this year, we held one of the successful monetary affairs committee meetings in South Sudan, in Juba in particular. And it came out very well. It signaled that we at the Bank of South Sudan can organize and execute an event. It also showed how prepared and how leveraged up we are to the region. In terms of branch network, we have expanded and opened a number of branches across the country. Of course, I was building on some of those, but there are new branches that came to being during my time. The classic example is the one of Numile and that of Awil. And of course, at the moment, we have also secured a land in Kwajok, and the branch fence is already start to be going up. So expanding branch network is one of those things that we have taken really we have taken to our hearts, just like a duck to water. It also goes without saying that improving staff welfare and capacity building are key in our efforts to modernize the bank. And with this, we believe that when staff are motivated and prioritized and well trained, they can go extra mile and deliver on our mandate. Finally, in response to these questions, I can say also that we have improved policy coordination with other stakeholders, which is very crucial. Central Bank doesn't work in isolation. We work with the Minister of Finance and other economic sectors, such as trade, revenue authority, and the cluster. And we have taken this one to a level where it used not to be. We have signed a number of MOUs. The classic example is the one that we have just signed last week on cash and liquidity management. We saw very well that in our system, there's so much cash floating in the economy. In other places, you don't see a lot of cash. People transact using electronic means of payment. You either use mobile money or you go to your bank account and you use check. We noted that too much cash is not good, and therefore we signed an MOU, and it has already kicked in. It has already become effective, and it's one of those things that's going to help us. This came along because of aspect of coordination. And finally, in terms of expansion of the bank, we have increased the number of directorates from 3 to 7. This we did not do it out of the blues, of course. It was done in line with the Bank Act that gave us the powers to reform in a way for us to deliver on our mandate. So this expansion of branch network, not just the expansion of the bank, the directorate and branch network are intended to enable to have a space and also for the team to be able to work and coordinate. And finally, the national payment system. One of the key projects that is really aimed at modernizing the banking systems in South Sudan and promote regional integration is in very high or in an advanced stage. This, the NPS, the national payment system, will enable us to harmonize with other payment systems in the East Africa community with an aim to stimulate economic growth and trade. And in preparing to host the NPS, the bank under my leadership has completed the civil work on data center, completed the SWIFT direct connectivity project, implemented a SWIFT scope. This is a system that will allow the bank to monitor all financial activities carried out by the commercial bank, and at the same time help us stabilize power issues across the branches of the Bank of South Sudan. So together, with the support of the leadership, with the support of our citizens, and with the support of the staff of the Bank of South Sudan, who are dedicated to their role, the bank has gone a step, but the work is not yet done.
Right. Thanks for that, Honorable Governor. But I also want you to talk to us a little bit about the role of the bank in managing the exchange rate and how effective really these measures can be.
We can, yes, it's true that at the moment our currency is getting weaker or has become weaker again a foreign currency, that's the US dollar. And it is because of a number of factors. Some of these are beyond the control of the bank and even beyond the control of the country. Some of them are external factors. They include the shocks that we see arising from other regions, such as, for example, the war that is happening in Eastern Europe and the one that we are seeing happening in Middle East, between, for example, between Israel and Gaza. That has an implication on the supply chain. When supply chain is disrupted, it affects supply itself and the prices. So that's what we see beyond our borders. But just cross to our border, we have the issue of Sudan, which has really disrupted our key source of revenue, and that is oil export. The war in Sudan has made it such that whatever little that we use to receive has become too small. And we are a country that depends so much on imports from other countries. And for you to import, you need the US dollar. So the lack of hard currency has meant that our ability to intervene in the market has been limited. But this is not to say that we are totally out of our toolkits. No, we still have the tools, but it's just that they have been affected. But so while there's a crisis, while there's the issue with currency depreciation, we are not just folding our hands and calling it quit. We are working. And here are the few things that we are doing to continue to strengthen our currency. We are continuing to strengthen the monetary policy framework. And in this case, the Bank of South Sudan employs monetary policy tool such as adjusting interest rates and reserve requirement to control the money supply. When we control the money supply, that has you pin down the inflation. So that we are doing, the strengthening of the toolkit is working. Of course, some of our tools, there are some of the tools that are very strong given the level of development in South Sudan, but there are some of the tools that are not very strong. Reserve requirement is one of the tools that we can just change anytime. You know, reserve requirement goes like this. If you go to the bank, Emmanuel, you take 100, just 100 SSP to the one of the commercial banks where you bank. The bank is required to keep 20% of that 100 SSP, and the 80% is considered excess reserves. They can't do anything with it. They can lend it to the public to make more money. They can lend it to other banks that are running short of cash. This 20% that they are required to keep, they don't keep it. they bring it to the bank. So when we think that there's too much SSP in the economy, we increase the reserve requirement so that they keep less and spend less. So this is one of the tools that is in the hands of the central bank. Of course, the interest rate has other mechanism. The interest rate works in so many ways. There are so many interest rates. If you go and buy a car in other places, there's an interest rate that you pay. If you go and buy a house, a mortgage, there is an interest rate. If you are building a road, there is even a bond, an interest rate. So there's interest rate on everything. In the case of South Sudan, all these interest rates are not working. The only interest rate that's working, or the rate that we know, is the exchange rate. And that's the only physical, that's the only tool that our people know. Why are these rates not working? It has nothing to do with our current state of affairs. It has to do with our legacy, where we have come from. Where we have come from, to build the financial sector, to put it in place, takes time. And when we became independent, we found that the system as a whole, we have to start from scratch as a country. So at the moment, we are building there. But to put all these tools in place takes time. The bank is working on those. This is not to renege or to say this is not our responsibility, it is our responsibility. But what I'm saying is that interest rate is one of the policy instruments that is not strong in this country. And there's a reason. I just gave an example. If you go now to one of the car dealers or to the dealerships, and you say, can I buy a car on credit? They will not give it to you. They want you to pay right away, to pay everything at once. That's not how markets are supposed to work in other places. If I have $1,000 equivalent in SSP in other places, I can buy a car, even if it is a 10th hand car. But in our situation, they want you to pay upfront. Some of these banking reform that we are doing are intended to improve the credit rating and to also ensure that you don't have to pay cash upfront, that you can do the credit. There's also the fiscal discipline that we are encouraging and advising the government. This is what I have said over and over. Whenever there's a gathering of government officials, or even in some of the receptions that I have gone to, I usually say fiscal discipline is something that we need in this country. How does it come about? Parliament passes a budget. It goes into law. It signs into law. And that says you spend based on the budget line. If you spend beyond, there must be a reason why you are spending beyond. If you try to spend what you don't have, there's also, you have to justify that, and it's not okay. So fiscal discipline is one way in which we are working very hard with the rest of the government sector to ensure that they avoid too much budget deficit and excessive borrowing. Because this one in the end, what you borrow in the end will have to be paid anyway. And so if you minimize those, then you can really reduce factors that can lead to inflation and currency depreciation. The last two one is improving governance and transparency in whatever we do, whether in through payments, through check printing, payment anywhere, payment at the bank, payment at the commercial bank, as long as there's transparency, there's less wastages or leakages. And at the same time, the key has been what the president and the rest of the government officials have been saying, which is we must diversify. Depending on one source of revenue has been catastrophic. We have seen it. It's good that this year a lot of people have heard the message from the leadership that we must go to farms and produce. And it's good that a number of people have begun to do that. So agriculture is one of those, so that we can expand the revenue base. At the same time, of course, diversifying also into other sectors such as agriculture, which I have just said, manufacturing and services. These can reduce our reliance on one source of revenue and expand the revenue base. Because if the government were to hand revenue from the oil and more, we would have just said, hell with oil, because we have something else. But at the moment, we are constrained. The last 1 year are our effort to build, to enforce or to implement the MOU on a single treasury single account. You might have heard about that. It goes like this, that if government has several accounts, they are consolidated. And payment in US dollars is reduced to essential. No one can say you can eliminate payment in US dollars. It's not possible. because there are certain payments that you need to make in US dollars. Somebody wants to travel abroad. They have a mission. You cannot use SSP in Eritrea or in Ethiopia. If you are there, you need the US dollar. You want to pay your international obligations to the UN or AU or anybody, you need US dollar. So there is a need for US dollars, but not everything that need to be paid in US dollar. And also for us to go ahead to price some of the products at home in US dollar, that area is not okay. And this is one of the way when we move toward implementing the TSA, the MOU on the TSA, it will enable us so that whatever little revenue that the government gets in USD is not all spent in dollars. That much of it is left for the bank to serve us to be able to have a reserve. And so this brings me to the last point that yes, we are working with the relevant institutions, especially the Minister of Finance, to ensure that we build reserves. Central Bank build reserves in several ways, but in our contract, we get dollars from finance. We buy from them, and it's that reserve that we use to build our reserve.
So you have a reserve now as you speak?
We have, but a government would always have some, but
do you mind sharing with us?
The figures are never shared.
I never shared.
Yeah,
but you have enough or some? Like
we have some, but as always,
in dollar, of course.
just like anywhere, reserves are always never enough. There's a level that we need to meet. For the East African community, the level is you have to have enough, something close to 4.5 months of import cover, such that if you were to buy at one everything that you need in 4 months, that countries must have. This is a target for the whole region. All countries in the East African community do not have. I can admit that we are not yet there, but we are below the rest of the country.
Right.
Because our source of FX, hard currency, has been affected. So, but we are struggling to raise, to have more. We are also encouraging direct investment, so that instead of companies that are coming to South Sudan to look for sovereign guarantees and collaterals in oil, we are telling them that it's best for you to come and put up your factories, employ people, produce, make your profit, repatriate it, because South Sudan, we have a liberal capital account. You bring your money, if it's legitimate, you take it out if it is legitimate money. So this is the message. And why are we doing that? Two reasons. One, our laws in the book are liberal, so that anyone can come with their money and live with their money. The last point on this is that we are working on strengthening and building institutions that can help to regulate the financial sector and enforce laws that are already in the book, with an aim to maintain financial stability, because financial stability is also key for macroeconomic stability. How does financial stability come about? When commercial banks are weak, when they have less capital, when they have less or untrained manpower. It's not our role, but it's our role in the sense, it's not a direct, but we give them advice. It's moral session, that you must do this, is good for you. You must train your people. You must be a strong bank. Because the banks are strong, they can lend to the public, and people who are borrowing money from the bank can use that to invest in their economic activities. So these are some of the things that we are doing to strengthen.
Right. So since you mentioned commercial banks, this complaint from some members of the public, especially customers or clients, that, for instance, when you withdraw $100, they tax, let's say, $5, for instance, and the commercial banks takes this blame back to the NRA for the tax levied on them, and the burden goes back to the customer. So how are you, as the Bank of South Sudan, managing the operations of commercial banks in the country?
We are the regulator. Central Bank, of course, is the regulator. We are also the user of the system, and we are trusted advisors to the commercial bank. We have had this concern, either from the members of the public, from the relevant institutions, such as even those in other places of authority, and we have had it directly from the commercial bank also. First of all, commercial banks are expected to charge a fee for the services that they are providing to the public. So charging a fee is not a problem, but it's how much. How much is too much, how much is too small. And that debate is never settled. So within this financial year, there's a discussion now between us, the bank, and the other economic sector to see if there's anything that can be done at all to adjust the rates that the parliament passes, which are then passed on to the revenue authority. Because the revenue authority does not do anything on their own except the rate that they receive. But the conventional wisdom or understanding now is that the rates, all the rates in South Sudan, especially from the rates that the revenue authority charges to the commercial bank are not high. So there's a debate here. But we have heard the matter. We are following up. We'll see if there's anything that can be adjusted. We will do it. Let our public be rest assured that the banks are not robbing them, and that the leaders across the field are not sleeping. And in particular, this is a matter that we have tasked our banking supervision department to look into, because they are the one that deal close with the commercial banks.
Right. So, Honorable Governor, in the context of the current economic crisis, what specific measures is your institution, the Bank of South Sudan, implementing to address the situation?
Okay. There are a number of them. Some of those that I have highlighted earlier under the achievements are those. The bank is an advisor to the government. The bank takes pride in fiscal discipline, fiscal prudence, and strengthening the tools that are within our powers. So when we are implementing cash and liquidity management framework, that is the policy position that we know already is helping to regulate how much SSP is in the economy. So that's one thing that is in our powers. The second one is this attempt to work with all the institutions, but particularly the Minister of Finance, to reduce any attempt to play around with overdrafts. And the Minister of Finance, the government has committed to zero overdraft, that we will spend within our means. If we don't have, we don't spend. If we have, we spend. The other one is our advice to the government to prioritize agriculture. Something that I have just said earlier, that agriculture has not been picked up by the members of the public during this planting season. And next year is going to be also a plan for the government to focus on it. From the side of the bank, we are building the system. The national payment system that we are building, this is also one of our measures that we are using, not just to address the challenges that we have, but to take us to a level that we think that we are now at the level with the East Africa community, modernizing the bank. So the payment system is one of those things that is helping us. Rebuilding reserves, foreign exchange reserve, is one of the key policy measures that we are now working on. Rebuilding reserve, I said earlier, is not an easy one, because you rebuild based on what you get. So at the moment, because the oil is shut down, we are not getting a lot, but we are getting something. And that small thing, we are putting something aside for the rainy day, and we are using the rest to support the market and to support the government operation. And then finally, these are two things that are not per se the mandate of the bank, but of the Minister of Finance and the government in general. To address crises like this, you really need discipline, like I said earlier, but you also need to generate revenue. And so the revenue authority has been empowered and supported by the government to continue to generate more non-oil revenue collection, because that's one way to minimize the impact that we would be seeing from the oil. So in this regard, there are attempts now on their side to automate, to ensure that the tax proceeds are not just done manually, but they are recorded, and there's a digital system that is being put in place. They are also improving the tax administration to ensure that the collections are going forward. And we are seeing that the collections are on an upward trend. So that is what you see. But the government as a whole, crisis can be addressed like this. You generate resources, you spend them wisely, and you produce. So these three things, if they line up, then an economy will get out of a shock like what we are doing. And we're working
so this is what is happening now.
This is what is happening now.
Right.
We are lining up.
And do we have any debt crisis, for instance, debt, and how is the bank really managing the country's debt?
No, as a country, we do not owe a lot of debts to anybody. We have a small one here and there, but those ones are manageable. Okay, you say how does the bank manage them? Okay, it's not the bank per se, but it's the government.
The government, okay.
Because if money is borrowed on behalf of a government.
Yes.
And when it is paid on behalf of a government. And usually we get those. Let's say we borrow from Bank A. The money comes to the government account. The Minister of Finance spends that money on behalf of the government. When the time comes for it to be paid, the Minister of Finance brings that money to the bank. We pay it on their behalf. So we are a facilitator. We are a custodian of the government resources. But there's a physical agent.
Right.
Yes.
And do you have, like, let's say, long-term or short-term plans for economic recovery and stabilizing, let's say, maybe the currency and the Bank of South Sudan?
Yeah, let me just go to economic theory.
Yes.
When countries are looking for a long term, there are factors of growth. One of them is improving skills and capital. And one way of doing that is to improve the skills of your staff, which is what the bank is doing. But at the same level also, most government institutions are doing that. So people are very important, they are resourceful. But if you have people who are unskilled, they will not contribute a lot to the growth. But how do we bring about skilled manpower? By investing in education and health. These are input to human capital. So the bank has focused on that because we know that is one thing. This is one driver of growth in the long term. That's human resource. At the same time, also improving upon other factors of production. Capital. We are working now to ensure that there's capital mobility. So that if you want to invest in Gudele, you invest your money in Gudele. If you want to invest in Kurijik or Gumbo or in Juba, you do that. And anywhere in South Sudan, whether you are a resident of South Sudan or a foreign national, as long as you have the legal, work. The other one is of course to improve production. Because when you produce, especially when you produce a lot, it is blissful. You consume more and you have the surplus. You sell that abroad, you bring in foreign currency. You use that foreign currency to buy something else that you need abroad, especially those things that you don't produce.
But looks like we still have a long way for that really to be realized.
Yes, so for now, in the long term, the one thing that will get us out of all these shocks up and down is for us to focus on production. Production, like I said earlier, not in one sector, but across the board, so that we explore gold and other rare minerals that we have, so that we focus on fishing and timber and agriculture, because these are the areas where others are even envy of South Sudan, that we have so much to explore. So our single focus on oil going forward will not be advisable. So these are some of the things that we would continue to play beyond the borders of South Sudan. Because in the end, because one hand cannot clap, you have to trade with other countries. And you have to trade when your borders are secured, when your relationships are good, and when we are seen to be active in the international arena. I brought this thing so that they also line up with the economic message that I've just wanted to pass.
Right, and since you mentioned international or the region, I want you also to briefly describe how is the Bank of South Sudan working with international financial institutions such as IMF and World Bank, and how Are they being supporting the Bank of South Sudan or the relations?
They have been very supportive, not just the Bank of South Sudan,
Mm.
the international financial institutions have been very supportive of South Sudan. I will just say something, a bit of history. It may not be the need for your consumption, but you'll get the context of what I tried to say. So in 2012, when we shut down the oil over the dispute over Iglik with Sudan, for example, and then immediately in 2013, we fought among ourselves, and that disappointed many of our friends in the international community, whether they are trading partners or political partners, whoever they are. And that disappointment continued until 2015. Then we have that short-term agreement, which was then disappointed again in 2016. Then we went back to war in 2016, only to be for the revitalized agreement to be signed in 2018. So all these times, most of our friends were just saying, what is happening with South Sudan? What is happening with South Sudan? Even those who are not political in their outlook or in their approach were also asking those questions. But after 2018, when peace was signed, we saw relative stability returning to South Sudan, and in towns and in the countryside. And we have seen from that time the peace agreement as held, and the prospects of peace and normality and social harmony and a march toward some democratic path was also appearing. And that also has given hope to friends in the international community, and more particular international financial institution, such that in 2020, and this is now part of what I know and why I said earlier that our relationships with them are very strong, such that in 2020, when the pandemic hit the world, it affected those countries with no social safety net. We have no money, we have no resources put aside for tomorrow. Everything we receive, we consume. Of course, we have big government, our resources are finite, and we are caught up by crisis, so that we have not even thought to save about tomorrow. When 2020 came and the COVID was here, South Sudan, like other countries, came to this international financial institution, more in particular to the International Monetary Fund. At the time I was there in Washington, I was the advisor on South Sudan and other countries. And we made the case to the board that South Sudan, because of the conflict, our workforce, in other places people were working from home because they have the internet, they have schools, they have everything at home. But in South Sudan, a lot of people were not working from home. There were those who say they braved it. They were strong enough to go to work. And they did not give up. Hospitals, I'm sure, even the media. But others who were not needed, critical needed, just stayed at home.
And they could non-essential stuff, for instance.
Non-essential stuff, and they could not work. So we made the case, and it became clear that at that point, South Sudan received a support in November 2020. That became like a lifeline. And then again in 2021, we received really two disbursements. There was one that came in March that year, and then there was one that came in August that year. From the IMF. And those were used to support the government operation, paying salaries, for example. And then from there, the World Bank came on board, African Development Bank came on board. So all along, the international financial institutions have been with us. Of course, when you receive resources from these countries or from these institutions, you have to be accountable. You have to do the reporting. And as the government, as the country, we have done that. The Bank of South Sudan is a key player in this role. And having been someone who was there, I know how they work, how they think. So we have kept our relationship really, really very high and remain strong as of today. One might say, why can't they come today and give us resources? It's not that simple, but it's not that hard also. there are procedures to be followed.
Right.
And we're working on some of those procedures.
Right. So, since we're about to wind up our conversation, I would like you also, Governor, to give a piece of advice. Now, first of all, many South Sudanese like hoarding money.
We are doing this thing at three levels. There's the enforcement aspect of it, there's the moral suasion, and there's also communication aspect of it. The enforcement is that if you are found on the street with let's say 100 million SSP, just right now, police will ask you, where are you going with this money? So that's the enforcement aspect of things. It is in operation. But there's also the moral suasion aspect of it, where we talk to commercial bank and says, when your customers come to withdraw money, tell them not to take too much cash. Let them transfer between account and account. And let them also send, if it's not account to account, mobile money to mobile money account. And then there's also the communication aspect of it, which is now from the bank to the public. So the MOU that I have highlighted earlier, it says from today onward, we would like with withdrawal from the bank to be reduced, so that you don't care beyond a certain limit. This has a benefit to the people. When you carry too much cash, there's a risk, security risk. You could be robbed, something bad can happen. And there are cases where people have been robbed, whether they are on motorcycles, on rickshaw, or in just coming out of a car. So to the public, there is a benefit. And from our role, we are playing something. We are communicating. We are passed an MOU that is going to support the role. So that's one thing. When you save your money in the bank also, not just the risk, there's also the convenience. When you carry too much cash, the effort for you to carry it, the sweat that you have to go through. Sometimes you have seen boxes. Just a little money is in boxes. That is not convenient. There's a cost to the individual. Opportunity cost or the real cost. A cost that you are paying someone to carry it for you. But there's a cost that if you have not carried this one, you would have done something else. So there are two costs involved here. There's the real cost and there's the opportunity cost to the customer or to the owner of the money. The last point, which is also of a great advantage to the customers, and this is what we see in other places, is that when you save your money in the bank, you get a small interest. Even if it's 0.00%, it's better than nothing. So when you have cash alone does not give you anything. But when you keep your money in the bank, it is invested by the bank to make more money. So keeping money in the bank is beneficial to the customers, is beneficial to commercial bank, is beneficial to the overall economy, because that will allow them to invest, to improve what? At the end of the day, it will improve standard of living. So my advice to our people is keep your money in the bank, draw as little as you can, and transact among yourself. We will also next week, I think, we'll be calling for a press conference with the heads of the mobile money operators and also with the commercial bank institution to give them this message, to say, please encourage our people to open their accounts with commercial bank, with mobile money operators. There are a number of them. We have Momo, we have mGrush, we have Nile Pay, we have Capital Pay, we have DigiCash. These are mobile money operators that can enable the members of the public to open an account, so that if I need to pay Emmanuel 1 million SSP, for example, I do not have to carry it physically and give it. I can just ask Emmanuel, what is your account number? You give me your account number, I key it in, just with a click, within a second you have received your 1 million.
Right. Talking about money, traders just these days have been complaining about commercial banks that when they are withdrawing money, they only give them a denomination, small denomination of 100, 500, and 1,000 is nowhere to be seen from the commercial banks. Is central bank involved in any way or another in this?
No, the issue of the cash itself is not a big problem. It's just a temporary matter. All the denominations are supposed to be used. People should not discriminate between denominations. If you pay someone, of course, you have 500 denomination, they will prepare 1,000 denomination. But that's the more reason to discourage carrying cash, because little denomination will mean that you have too much cash to carry. So we want to discourage people from carrying cash. So that's one thing that we are using. The traders, why do they need to carry cash even? If you are going to buy something from store A, you just write them a check. They will deposit in your account. If somebody is coming into the store to buy something, you have your account. They will write you a check, or they will do the transfer. Of course, mobile money, there's a limit to how much that can be transferred. But between the commercial bank, the sky is the limit. So this complaint doesn't make sense, especially from the traders.
Right.
Do they need cash to eat it? No, to facilitate trade. And checks can do that. Electronic means of payment can do that.
Now, what's your last message to the people of South Sudan? A message of hope, because they continue to see South pound losing or depreciating against the US dollar. Families are finding it very difficult to put food on the table, even one meal for their loved ones. And they're still keeping hope, especially in critical institutions such as Central Bank and also the Ministry of Finance, among many institutions. But from your side, what message would you tell the public there as the governor of the Bank of South Sudan?
Okay, I will give them a nuanced but a hopeful one, which is to say that there is always a silver lining. No matter how dark today appears, there are so many clouds. It's all appears gloomy. Just within a blink of an eye, a beam of light can just appear from nowhere, and you see the light. A country like South Sudan should behave like that. This issue of the oil shutdown is a temporary measure. The war in Sudan will be brought to an end. Our oil would flow because the government is working day and night to ensure that oil production resumes. That would be one quick way to resolve some of this. But in the long run, the government is working to putting fundamentals in place. Fundamentals such as having a constraint, a lean government. And you only do that when you have the elections, when you have the mandated government, and that process is in place. So our people should be hopeful that even if we have this government that is so big, there is coming a time when this government would be lean. If we are improving our communication, if we are improving our monetary policy framework, if we are improving the national payment system, if we are improving transparency, if we are improving staff welfare, if we are expanding the branch networks, we have put in place key measures that, if supported by the external factors, what the bank is doing would take us far. Here we are not saying that others are not doing their task. What we are saying, at the bank we have put in place measures that just need to be supported by the external factors. And at the moment we are hopeful that the leadership and the country is supporting the bank to move forward. While bank is just one organ within the larger body called South Sudan. If we cannot do our role, and the rest cannot do their role, then we cannot go everywhere. So my message is that the exchange rate stability or instability you see is also a temporary measures, in the sense that if production starts today, we receive hard currency, we intervene in the market, this problem will be wiped away. It's not wishful thinking. We are working together as one people to resolve that.
On behalf of my colleague Lo Nelson and me, Emmanuel Joseph Akile, thank you very much for watching this video. Continue following us on our YouTube channel. Thank you.